The night was quiet inside the hospital ward, with only the soft beeping of machines breaking the silence. Michael DeSanta, Franklin Clinton, and Trevor Phillips lay on their hospital beds, their bodies wrapped in bandages, the aftermath of their latest failed heist. Arthur Morgan, Dutch van der Linde, and John Marston were in the beds beside them, also heavily injured from their recent shootout with a rival gang. Joel Miller, Owen Grady, and Lamar Davis joined them, their critically injured legs aching as they settled in for the night. As the moon cast a pale glow through the windows, Blue, the female adult velociraptor, entered the room. The creature had formed a deep bond with Owen Grady during their time together at Jurassic World, and now she watched over him as he slept, her clawed arms gently brushing against his bandaged body. I can't believe we ended up like this, Michael groaned, breaking the silence. We were supposed to be untouchable, the best in the business. Franklin nodded in agreement. Yeah, well, shit happens. We underestimated our enemies, and now we're paying the price. Trevor let out a growl of frustration. I hate lying here like this, helpless and weak. I want revenge, damn it. Arthur, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. Revenge won't solve anything, Trevor. We need to focus on healing and getting back on our feet. Dutch nodded in agreement. Arthur's right. We need to regroup, strategize, and come back stronger than ever. Our enemies won't know what hit them. As the injured men talked amongst themselves, Blue watched over them with silent amusement. She had seen many battles in her time at Jurassic World, but never had she witnessed a group of humans so determined to overcome their injuries and rise again. I admire your spirit, humans, Blue said softly, her voice a low rumble in the quiet room. You may be broken and lost now, but you have the strength and determination to find your way back. The injured men looked at her in surprise, their eyes wide with shock at the sight of a velociraptor speaking to them. But Blue paid them no mind, her gaze fixed on Owen Grady as she continued to caress his injured body with her clawed arms. Rest well, my dear friend Owen, Blue said, her voice gentle and soothing. You will be back on your feet soon, I promise you that. With a final smile, Blue settled down on the floor beside Owen's bed, her long tail curling around her as she drifted off to sleep. The hospital room was silent once more, the injured men lulled into a peaceful slumber by the comforting presence of their new friend. And as the night stretched on, the promise of healing and redemption hung in the air, a beacon of hope for the broken and lost souls lying in their hospital beds. For they knew that with determination, courage, and the support of their newfound ally, they would rise again, stronger than ever before. And the shadows of their past failures would fade into nothingness, replaced by the bright promise of a new beginning. Words, 500. The hospital room was silent as the night settled in, broken only by the soft groans of pain from the injured characters lying on the beds. Michael DeSanta, Franklin Clinton, Trevor Phillips, Arthur Morgan, Dutch van der Linde, John Marston, Joel Miller, Owen Grady, and Lamar Davis all lay there, their bodies heavily bandaged and broken from the events that had led them to this point. Michael DeSanta was the first to speak, his voice barely above a whisper as he uttered the words, "We are broken and lost." His words hung in the air, a somber reminder of the pain and suffering they had all endured. As the night wore on, a new figure appeared in the hospital room. Blue, the female adult velociraptor friend of Owen Grady, silently made her way to the beds and lay down on the floor. She watched over the injured characters, a silent presence in the dimly lit room. With a soft chuckle, Blue spoke to the sleeping figures. Rest well, my dear friend Owen, sweetie sweetheart, you will be back on your feet soon. Her words were comforting, a promise of better days ahead. As she gently rubbed her long clawed arms over Owen's injured body, a sense of peace settled over the room. The injured characters drifted off to sleep, their pain momentarily forgotten in the presence of this mysterious and comforting creature. The night passed slowly, the only sound the steady rise and fall of the sleeping characters' chests. Blue remained on the floor, a silent guardian over her friends as they rested and healed. As dawn broke, the characters slowly began to stir. Michael DeSanta was the first to wake, his eyes filled with determination. He looked over at his injured companions and knew that they would not give up. Standing up from his bed, Michael spoke with a newfound strength in his voice. We may be broken, but we are not lost. We will rise from this, stronger than before. Franklin Clinton, Trevor Phillips, Arthur Morgan, Dutch van der Linde, John Marston, Joel Miller, Owen Grady, and Lamar Davis all looked at each other, a sense of unity growing between them. They knew that they had faced their darkest hour together, and that they would emerge from it as a stronger and more resilient group. With Blue by their side, the characters began their journey towards recovery. They faced many challenges and obstacles along the way, but they never lost sight of their goal. Together, they fought back against the odds and emerged victorious. As they left the hospital behind, the characters knew that they had been forever changed by their shared experience. They had found a new sense of purpose and camaraderie, a bond that would never be broken. And as they looked to the horizon, a new day dawned, bringing with it the promise of new adventures and challenges. With Blue by their side, they knew that they were ready to face whatever the future held, united as a team and stronger than ever before. Words, 506. As the night enveloped the hospital room in darkness, the beeping of machines and the soft rustling of bandages filled the air. Michael DeSanta, Franklin Clinton, and Trevor Phillips lay on their beds, their bodies covered in bandages from head to toe. Arthur Morgan, Dutch van der Linde, and John Marston were in similar states, their bodies broken and battered. Joel Miller, Owen Grady, and Lamar Davis joined the group, their injuries evident as they settled onto the hospital beds. The room was filled with the soft groans of pain as each character tried to find a comfortable position to rest. Amidst the quiet of the room, a sudden movement caught everyone's attention. Blue, the female adult velociraptor from Jurassic World, had appeared in the hospital room. She lay down on a bed, her head held high as she gazed at the injured characters with a smirk on her lips. You all look like you've been through quite a lot, Blue said softly, her voice a gentle whisper in the room. But rest assured, you will heal in time. Owen Grady, who was particularly close to Blue, stirred slightly at her comforting words. Blue reached out a clawed arm and gently rubbed it against his injured body, offering him some solace in his pain. Rest well, my dear friend Owen, Blue said sweetly. You will be back on your feet soon. With a final chuckle, Blue settled back onto the floor, her eyes closing in sleep. The injured characters watched her in awe, comforted by her presence in the darkened room. In the silence that followed, Michael DeSanta spoke up, his voice filled with weariness. We are broken and lost, he muttered, his words a reflection of the pain and exhaustion they all felt. The other characters nodded in agreement, their injuries a stark reminder of the dangers they faced in their daily lives. As the night wore on, the beeping of machines and the soft rustling of bandages lulled the characters into a restless sleep. Dreams of past adventures and future challenges filled their minds, each one hoping for a swift recovery so they could be back on their feet once more. Through the darkness of the night, the injured characters found a glimmer of hope in each other's presence, a reminder that they were not alone in their struggles. And as they drifted off to sleep, they knew that they would face whatever challenges came their way with strength and determination, united in their bond of friendship and resilience. Words, 422. Michael DeSanta groaned softly as he shifted in his hospital bed, the pain from his injuries shooting through his body. Damn, that was one hell of a job gone wrong, he muttered under his breath, wincing as he tried to adjust his bandages. Franklin Clinton, lying in the bed next to him, let out a low groan. Man, I can't believe we ended up like this. I thought we had it all under control. Trevor Phillips, in the bed beside Franklin, let out a raucous laugh. Ha! You call this under control? We're a mess, all of us. And to think, we used to be the top dogs in Los Santos. Arthur Morgan, Dutch van der Linde, and John Marston, who were in the beds across from the GTA 5 trio, groaned in unison. We ain't looking too good ourselves, boys, Arthur muttered. Looks like we'll be spending some time in this damn hospital. Joel Miller, Owen Grady, and Lamar Davis, three newcomers to the scene, limped into the room, their injuries visible even through the bandages that covered them. Joel let out a weary sigh as he sank onto a bed. I never thought I'd end up here, not after all we've been through. Owen, his face contorted in pain, nodded in agreement. Yeah, well, at least we're all in this together. We'll get through it, one way or another. As the night settled over the hospital, the room fell into a heavy silence. The beeping of machines and the occasional groan of pain were the only sounds that filled the air. Suddenly, a soft rustling caught everyone's attention. Blue, the female velociraptor from Jurassic World, padded into the room and settled herself on the floor, her large eyes fixed on the injured group. She let out a soft chuckle, her sharp teeth gleaming in the dim light. Well, well, well. Looks like you boys are in quite a pickle, huh? Michael raised an eyebrow, his curiosity piqued. And who might you be, darling? Blue's gaze traveled over each of the injured men before she finally settled her eyes on Owen. I am Blue, friend of Owen Grady. And it seems like you all could use a little bit of raptor wisdom. The injured men exchanged glances, unsure of what to make of this unexpected visitor. But something about Blue's presence was strangely comforting, and they all found themselves listening intently as she continued to speak. Rest well, my dear friend Owen, Blue said softly, her clawed arms reaching out to gently stroke his injured body. You will be back on your feet soon enough. And as for the rest of you, remember this, even the strongest can fall, but it is in our darkest moments that we find our true strength. With that, Blue settled herself down on the floor, her eyes closing as she drifted off to sleep. The injured men watched her in silence, their hearts filled with a newfound sense of hope. As the night wore on, the beeping of machines and the quiet breathing of the sleeping men filled the room. And in that moment, despite the pain and the uncertainty that lay ahead, they all felt a kinship that would see them through whatever challenges came their way. And so, as the first light of dawn broke over the hospital, the injured men awoke, their bodies still battered and bruised but their spirits unbowed. With Blue's words echoing in their minds, they knew that they would face whatever came next together, as a team. And with that thought, they began to truly heal. Words, 600. As the night grew darker, the hospital ward fell silent, save for the low groans of the injured individuals lying on their beds. Michael DeSanta, Franklin Clinton, and Trevor Phillips, the trio from GTA 5, were exhausted and battered from their failed daily events. Their bodies were wrapped in bandages, their limbs heavily injured and in need of rest. Meanwhile, Arthur Morgan, Dutch van der Linde, and John Marston, members of the Van der Linde gang, were also lying on nearby beds, their bodies similarly covered in bandages. They had faced their own share of dangers and were now paying the price for their actions. Joel Miller, a survivor from The Last of Us, Owen Grady, the velociraptor trainer from Jurassic World, and Lamar Davis, a character from GTA 5, had also been brought to the hospital with critical injuries. Joel's leg was badly injured, Owen's body was covered in scratches and bite marks from his beloved velociraptors, and Lamar had been shot in the leg during a botched heist. Despite their pain, all of the characters eventually drifted off into a fitful sleep, their bodies finally able to rest after the trials of the day. Michael DeSanta, in a moment of clarity, whispered softly to himself, "We are broken and lost," before succumbing to sleep once more. It was then that Blue, Owen Grady's female adult velociraptor friend, appeared in the hospital ward. She padded silently over to Owen's bed, her gaze fixed on him as she smiled softly to herself. Her long, clawed arms gently traced over his injured body, a gesture of comfort and reassurance. "Rest well, my dear friend Owen," she murmured. "Sweetie sweetheart, you will be back on your feet soon." With a final pat on his shoulder, Blue settled down on the floor, her arms crossed as she drifted off to sleep. The night was still and quiet, broken only by the sounds of the injured characters breathing softly in their sleep. In the darkness, a sense of camaraderie and shared pain filled the room, binding them together in their moment of vulnerability. As the first light of dawn began to filter through the windows, the characters stirred awake, their injuries throbbing with renewed pain. Michael DeSanta sat up groggily, his gaze sweeping over the room as he took in the sight of his fellow patients. "We may be broken and lost," he said quietly, "but we're still standing. And that counts for something." The others nodded in agreement, a silent understanding passing between them. With a collective effort, the characters pushed themselves to their feet, leaning on each other for support as they prepared to face the challenges that lay ahead. Despite their injuries and setbacks, they knew that they were not alone in their struggle. As they limped out of the hospital ward, guided by a newfound sense of unity and purpose, they shared a silent promise to each other: no matter what trials they faced, they would always stand together, broken but unbroken, lost but never alone. And with that shared resolve, they stepped out into the new day, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. Words, 528. The dimly lit hospital room was filled with the sounds of heavy breathing and soft groans as the injured characters from different worlds lay on their beds, their bodies covered in bandages. Michael DeSanta, Franklin Clinton, and Trevor Phillips from GTA 5 were lying on one side of the room, their faces contorted in pain as they tried to find a comfortable position on their beds. On the other side of the room, Arthur Morgan, Dutch van der Linde, and John Marston from Red Dead Redemption were in a similar state, their injuries just as severe as those of the GTA trio. Joel Miller from The Last of Us, Owen Grady from Jurassic World, and Lamar Davis from GTA 5 were the latest additions to the group, their injured legs causing them to wince with every movement. As the night settled in, the room fell silent as the characters finally drifted off to sleep, their bodies exhausted from the events of the day. Michael DeSanta let out a soft sigh as he shifted slightly on his bed, his eyes fluttering closed as he whispered to himself, "We are broken and lost." Blue, the female adult velociraptor friend of Owen Grady, appeared in the room, her sharp eyes scanning the injured characters with a sense of quiet amusement. She padded over to Owen's bed and lay down beside him, her sleek body curled up at his side as she gently rubbed her clawed arms against his injured body. "Rest well, my dear friend Owen, sweetheart," Blue whispered softly, her voice surprisingly gentle. "You will be back on your feet soon." With one last fond look at Owen, Blue closed her eyes and settled into sleep on the floor beside his bed, her long clawed arms crossed in front of her as she drifted off into dreams of distant jungles and ancient creatures. The night passed slowly, the room shrouded in darkness as the injured characters slept soundly, their bodies slowly healing from the trials of the day. The soft beeping of machines filled the room, a constant reminder of their vulnerable state. As the first light of dawn crept into the room, the characters began to stir, their bodies shifting restlessly on the beds as they slowly woke from their slumber. Michael DeSanta was the first to open his eyes, his gaze wandering around the room before settling on the still sleeping Blue. "Thank you, Blue," Michael murmured softly, a small smile playing on his lips. "For watching over us." Blue stirred at the sound of his voice, her eyes opening to meet his with a quiet intensity. She let out a soft chirp of acknowledgement before returning her gaze to Owen, her silent protectorate. The rest of the characters slowly roused from their sleep, their injuries still throbbing with pain but their spirits lifted by the presence of their newfound friend. They exchanged soft words of gratitude and reassurance, their bond strengthened by their shared ordeal. As the morning sun rose higher in the sky, casting a warm glow over the hospital room, the characters knew that they would face many more challenges in the days to come. But with Blue by their side, they felt a sense of hope and determination that they had not felt before. Together, they would overcome whatever trials lay ahead, united in their shared struggle and their unbreakable bond of friendship. And as they faced the new day with steely resolve, they knew that they were truly broken but not lost, for they had each other to lean on in their darkest hours. Words, 598. The hospital room was filled with the quiet sounds of sleeping bodies, the beeping of machines, and the gentle hum of the air conditioning. Michael DeSanta lay on his bed, his chest rising and falling slowly as he slept. Suddenly, he stirred and muttered, "We are broken and lost." Franklin Clinton, in the bed next to him, heard the words and turned to look at Michael. "What do you mean, man?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. Michael opened his eyes and looked at Franklin. "I mean, we're all here, lying in this hospital bed, broken and lost," he said. "We've been through so much, and yet here we are, battered and bruised." Just then, Trevor Phillips, in the bed on the other side of Michael, groaned and shifted in his sleep. "What the hell happened to us?" he muttered, his voice rough with pain. As the three men lay in silence, trying to make sense of their injuries and the events that led them to the hospital, three other figures entered the room. Arthur Morgan, Dutch van der Linde, and John Marston, all from the Wild West days, were now lying on beds, their bodies heavily bandaged and their faces grim with pain. As they settled in, Joel Miller, Owen Grady, and Lamar Davis entered the room, their injuries evident as they hobbled over to empty beds. Joel, with a bandaged leg, winced as he sat down, while Owen, his arm in a sling, lay back with a sigh of relief. The room was now filled with the sounds of groans and muttered curses as the injured characters tried to find a comfortable position on their beds. The night stretched on, the darkness outside punctuated only by the dim light of the hospital room. Suddenly, Blue, the female adult velociraptor friend of Owen Grady from Jurassic World, appeared in the room. She padded silently over to Owen's bed and lay down, her head lifted as she looked around at the injured characters. "Rest well, my dear friend Owen, sweetheart," Blue said softly, her voice a gentle murmur. "You will be back on your feet soon." As Blue settled into sleep on the floor, her long clawed arms crossed tightly against her chest, tears filled her reptilian eyes. She mourned the loss of her velociraptor teammates, Charlie, Echo, and Delta, silently crying while the others slept on, unaware of her grief. The night wore on, the injured characters lost in dreams and pain. Blue, still mourning, silently sobbed in her sleep, grinding her sharp teeth as she lay curled up on the floor. The darkness of the night was heavy in the room, but the injured characters slept on, their bodies slowly healing from the physical wounds they had sustained. The night carried on, the hospital room filled with the sounds of sleeping bodies and the quiet weeping of a grieving velociraptor. And as the night turned to dawn, the injured characters slowly began to wake, ready to face another day of recovery and healing. Words, 504. It was a cold and dark night at the hospital, with all the injured characters from different universes lying on their beds, heavily bandaged and in pain. Michael DeSanta, Franklin Clinton, and Trevor Phillips from GTA 5, Arthur Morgan, Dutch Van der Linde, and John Marston were all there, along with Joel Miller, Owen Grady, and Lamar Davis. As they all lay there in their beds, silently moaning in pain, Blue, the female adult velociraptor friend of Owen Grady, appeared in the room. She lay down on the floor next to Owen, gently rubbing her long clawed arms on his injured body. Rest well, my dear friend Owen, sweetie sweetheart. You will be back on your feet soon, Blue whispered, a sad smile on her lips. She then curled up on the floor, tears silently streaming from her reptilian eyes. Blue mourned the loss of her velociraptor team members, Charlie, Echo, and Delta, in her sleep. She sobbed quietly, feeling lost and alone without them. I am so sorry, my friends. I am lost without you. I don't know where to go, she whispered through her tears. The night wore on, with all the injured characters sleeping peacefully on their beds. Blue continued to cry silently, mourning her lost teammates, her sharp teeth grinding in sorrow. She felt the weight of their absence heavily on her heart, the loss of her friends causing deep inner trauma. As the night continued, Blue's tears flowed freely, her face and eyes covered in a film of sadness. She remained in her sleeping state, silently grieving, feeling the pain of her loss acutely in her heart. I am so sorry, my dear sweet friends. I truly am. I am lost, Blue whispered, her voice heavy with sorrow. The emotional pain of her loss weighed heavily on her, as the cold winter night dragged on. The room was filled with a somber atmosphere, the characters all sleeping soundly, unaware of Blue's silent mourning. The night was long, and Blue's tears continued to fall, a testament to the deep bond she shared with her lost velociraptor team members. As dawn broke, Blue's tears finally subsided, leaving her with a sense of peace and acceptance. She knew she would always carry the memory of her friends in her heart, their loss shaping her in ways she never imagined. And so, the injured characters continued to sleep, their bodies healing and their hearts finding solace in the bonds of friendship and loyalty that transcended time and space. Despite the pain and loss they had endured, they knew they would find strength in each other, forever connected by the trials they had faced together. Words, 445. Words, 595. The sound of machines beeping and the soft hum of the hospital filled the room where all the characters from different worlds lay in critical condition. Michael DeSanta shifted uncomfortably on his bed, trying to find a position that didn't ache so much. This is messed up, man, he muttered, his voice strained from the pain. Franklin Clinton, lying in the bed next to him, nodded in agreement. Tell me about it. We messed up big time out there. Trevor Phillips, the wild card of the trio, let out a low grunt from his bed. It was a disaster. We should have known better. As the three GTA 5 characters lamented their failed events, Arthur Morgan, Dutch Van der Linde, and John Marston from the Red Dead Redemption universe laid in their own beds, bandaged and bruised from their own misadventures. Arthur, his voice hoarse, spoke up first. We thought we could outsmart them. We were wrong. Dutch, usually the one with a plan, remained silent, lost in his own thoughts. John, the quietest of the three, simply closed his eyes and tried to block out the pain. Just then, Joel Miller, Owen Grady, and Lamar Davis joined the group, their injuries visible and painful. Joel winced as he shifted on the bed, trying to find a more comfortable position for his injured leg. Owen, his usually confident demeanor replaced with a look of concern, glanced around the room at the other injured characters. We need to recover fast. We can't let them win. Lamar, always the jokester, tried to lighten the mood. Well, at least we get to lounge around in these comfy beds, right? As night fell over the hospital, the characters settled in for some much-needed rest. Blue, the female velociraptor from Jurassic World, appeared in the room, her presence both comforting and strange. Blue lay down on the floor, her sharp claws resting against her chest as she watched over the sleeping characters. She let out a quiet chuckle, her reptilian eyes glinting in the dim light. Rest well, my dear friends, she whispered, her voice soft and comforting. You will be back on your feet soon. As she gently rubbed Owen's injured body with her clawed arms, Blue's eyes filled with tears. She mourned the loss of her velociraptor team members, Charlie, Echo, and Delta. I miss you all so much, she murmured, her voice filled with sorrow. I am lost without you. The night continued on, the characters sleeping peacefully as Blue silently cried and mourned the loss of her friends. Her heart was heavy with grief, but she knew she had to stay strong for the others. As the night stretched on, Blue's tears continued to fall, her silent sobs echoing in the quiet room. She felt the weight of her loss pressing down on her, but she knew she had to find a way to move forward. And so, as the night turned to day and the sun rose over the hospital, Blue dried her tears, determination shining in her eyes. She may have been broken and lost, but she knew that with time and strength, she would find a way to heal and honor the memory of her fallen friends. The characters awoke to a new day, their injuries slowly healing as they looked to Blue for guidance and support. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that they were stronger together than they could ever be apart. And with Blue by their side, they knew that they could overcome anything that came their way. It was a cold winter night at the hospital as the injured characters from different worlds lay on their beds, all lost and broken in their own way. Michael DeSanta, Franklin Clinton, and Trevor Phillips from GTA 5 were lying on their beds, their bodies heavily bandaged from their failed daily events. Arthur Morgan, Dutch van der Linde, and John Marston were also in critical condition, their bodies covered in bandages as they tried to rest and recover. As the night fell, Joel Miller, Owen Grady, and Lamar Davis joined the others on the hospital beds, their injuries weighing heavily on them. They all groaned in pain, trying to find some comfort in sleep. In the midst of all this, Blue, the female adult velociraptor friend of Owen Grady from Jurassic World, appeared in the hospital bedroom. She lay down on a bed, her head held high as she silently smirked and chuckled to herself. She gently rubbed her long clawed arms on Owen's injured body, offering him words of encouragement. "Rest well, my dear friend Owen. You will be back on your feet soon," Blue whispered softly before settling back to sleep on the floor. Her tear-filled reptilian eyes spoke of the deep loss she felt for her Velociraptor team members, Charlie, Echo, and Delta. "I am lost. I miss my team so much. I feel so lost without them," Blue murmured in her sleep, tears streaming down her face. She clenched her clawed arms tightly, mourning the absence of her friends. As the night wore on, the injured characters slept peacefully, unaware of Blue's silent grief. She continued to cry in her sleep, grinding her sharp teeth and sobbing quietly as she mourned the loss of her teammates. Blue's heart was heavy with sorrow, her mind filled with memories of her lost friends. She wept silently, her tears falling to the floor as she struggled to come to terms with her grief. "I am so sorry, my friends. I am lost. I don't know where to go," Blue whispered through her tears, her voice thick with emotion. She felt the weight of her loss pressing down on her, the absence of her teammates leaving her feeling adrift. The night stretched on, the cold seeping into the hospital room as Blue continued to cry and mourn. She felt an overwhelming sense of emptiness, a void left by the loss of her Velociraptor team. "I miss you all so much. I am so lost without you. I am so sorry, my sweet dear friends," Blue lamented, her voice breaking with sorrow. She curled up on the floor, her eyes tightly shut as she wept for her fallen comrades. With each tear that fell, Blue felt the pain of her loss acutely. The night seemed endless as she grieved for her friends, her heart heavy with the weight of her sorrow. As the hours passed and the night wore on, Blue remained lost in her grief, her silent tears a testament to the deep bond she shared with her Velociraptor team. In the darkness of the hospital room, she found solace in her memories, holding on to them tightly as she mourned the loss of her beloved friends. Words. 5. The night was cold and the hospital ward was filled with the sound of soft snores as the injured characters from different worlds lay on their respective beds. Michael DeSanta, Franklin Clinton, and Trevor Phillips from GTA 5 were breathing heavily, their bodies covered in bandages. Arthur Morgan, Dutch van der Linde, and John Marston were also lying on their beds, their injuries just as severe as the GTA trio. Joel Miller, Owen Grady and Lamar Davis joined them, their legs heavily injured, adding to the somber atmosphere of the room. As they all settled down to rest, Michael DeSanta let out a quiet whisper, "We are broken and lost." His words hung heavy in the air as he drifted back to sleep, his breathing slow and steady. As the night wore on, a figure emerged from the shadows and made her way to Owen Grady's bed. It was Blue, the female adult velociraptor from Jurassic World, a friend of Owen's. She lay down next to him, her clawed arms gently rubbing his injured body. "Rest well, my dear friend Owen, sweetie sweetheart. You will be back on your feet soon," Blue whispered, a hint of sadness in her voice. She then curled up on the floor, her tear-filled eyes silently grieving for her lost velociraptor companions, Charlie, Echo, and Delta. Blue's silent mourning went unnoticed by the other sleeping characters, who remained oblivious to her pain. She ground her sharp teeth, tears streaming down her reptilian face as she sobbed quietly, mourning the loss of her friends. "I am lost. I miss my team so much. I feel so lost without them. I am so sorry, friends. I am so lost," Blue whispered in her sleeping state, her voice filled with grief. The night continued on, the characters sleeping peacefully as Blue cried silently on the floor, her heart heavy with sorrow. She continued to mourn her lost teammates, the weight of their absence weighing heavily on her soul. "I am so sorry, my friends. I am lost. I don't know where to go. I am so sorry," Blue whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Her tears flowed freely, creating a small puddle on the floor as she grieved for her fallen comrades. As the night stretched on, Blue's emotional pain became palpable, her silent sobs echoing through the room. She felt her heart shatter with the weight of her grief, the loss of her friends a burden too heavy to bear. I miss you all so much. I am so lost without them. I am so sorry, my sweet dear friends Charlie, Echo, and Delta, Blue whispered, her voice filled with regret and sorrow. And so, the night passed with Blue silently mourning on the floor, her tears a testament to the pain she felt. The other characters slept on, unaware of her grief, as the cold winter night enveloped them in its darkness. Words. 483. The night was long and filled with a heavy silence as Michael DeSanta, Franklin Clinton, and Trevor Phillips lay on their hospital beds, their bodies covered in bandages and their faces contorted in pain. I can't believe this happened, Franklin muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Trevor groaned in agreement, his eyes closed tightly as he tried to block out the pain. We were so close to getting out of this mess, Michael added, his voice strained with emotion. Meanwhile, Arthur Morgan, Dutch van der Linde, and John Marston lay on the beds next to them, their injuries just as severe as the trio from GTA 5. I never thought it would end like this, Dutch said, his voice filled with regret. Arthur only nodded, his eyes staring blankly at the ceiling as he tried to make sense of what had happened. As the night wore on, Joel Miller, Owen Grady, and Lamar Davis joined them, each with their own injuries that needed time to heal. Blue, the female velociraptor friend of Owen, appeared in the room, her presence both comforting and unsettling at the same time. Rest well, my dear friend Owen, Blue said softly, her voice barely audible. You will be back on your feet soon. She then turned to the other injured characters, her eyes full of sorrow. I miss my team so much, Blue whispered, tears glistening in her reptilian eyes. I am lost without them. As the night continued, Blue's silent sobs echoed through the room, her grief palpable as she mourned the loss of her velociraptor teammates. I am so sorry, my friends, Blue mumbled, her voice breaking with emotion. I am lost. I don't know where to go. The other characters remained oblivious to Blue's pain, lost in their own thoughts and struggles as they tried to find peace in sleep. But Blue's grief was a constant presence in the room, a reminder of the tragedy that had befallen them all. As the night dragged on, Blue's tears soaked the floor beneath her, a silent testament to her deep sorrow and heartbreak. Hours passed, but Blue's mourning continued, her silent cries echoing through the room like a haunting melody. I miss you all so much, Blue whispered, her voice barely audible. I am so lost without you. The night seemed endless, the darkness oppressive as the injured characters slept on, unaware of the pain and sorrow that surrounded them. And as the first light of dawn crept through the windows, Blue finally fell into a fitful sleep, her tears drying on her face as she dreamed of happier times with her velociraptor friends. The room was filled with a heavy silence as the injured characters slept on, their bodies slowly healing as they faced the challenges of a new day. But for Blue, the pain of loss would always be a part of her, a reminder of the bonds that had been broken and the friends that had been lost. And as she slept, her broken heart remained open to the possibility of healing, of finding a way to move forward despite the darkness that surrounded her. As the night stretched on, the hospital room was filled with the sounds of muffled groans and the soft whir of machines. Michael DeSanta, Franklin Clinton, and Trevor Phillips lay in their beds, their bodies covered in bandages from head to toe. Across the room, Arthur Morgan, Dutch van der Linde, and John Marston were also resting, their bodies heavily bandaged and bruised. Just then, Joel Miller, Owen Grady, and Lamar Davis were wheeled in, their injuries just as severe as the others. They joined the group, each settling into their own bed with a sigh of relief. As the night settled in and the room grew quiet, Blue, Owen's loyal velociraptor friend from Jurassic World, appeared in the doorway. She padded silently into the room, her bright blue scales shimmering in the dim light. Blue moved to Owen's bedside, her clawed hand gently resting on his arm. She looked down at him with sorrowful eyes, her teeth bared in a silent snarl of pain. Rest well, my dear friend, Blue said softly. You will be back on your feet soon. With that, Blue moved to the floor, curling up into a tight ball. Tears filled her reptilian eyes as she mourned the loss of her velociraptor team members, Charlie, Echo, and Delta. I am lost. I miss my team so much, Blue murmured, her voice barely audible. I am so sorry, friends. I am so lost. Blue's silent sobs echoed through the room as she continued to cry for her fallen comrades. Her grief was palpable, hanging heavy in the air as she curled up on the floor, her tears staining the tile beneath her. The other injured characters on their beds slept on, unaware of Blue's mourning. They were lost in their own pain, their own battles to heal and recover. But Blue's heartache was a reminder of the fragility of their world, the cost of their dangerous lives. As the night wore on, her tears continued to fall, a silent testament to the bonds of friendship and the pain of loss. The room was filled with a heavy silence, broken only by Blue's soft cries. The night seemed endless, stretching on, a dark and lonely expanse of time. But as the first light of morning filtered through the windows, Blue lifted her head. Her tear-stained face was a mask of determination, her eyes shining with newfound resolve. I will carry on, Blue whispered, her voice strong with conviction. I will honor their memory and continue the fight. For Charlie, Echo, and Delta, I will not give up. With a final glance at Owen's sleeping form, Blue rose to her feet. She squared her shoulders, the weight of her grief now transformed into a fierce determination. The room was silent once more, but this time, it was different. The echoes of Blue's mourning had faded, replaced by the quiet strength of a warrior ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. And as the sun rose, casting its golden light over the hospital room, Blue stepped out into the new day. Her heart was heavy with loss, but her spirit was unbroken. She would carry on, for her fallen friends and for the future they had fought for. Words, 540. The night was long and quiet in the hospital room where Michael DeSanta, Franklin Clinton, Trevor Phillips, Arthur Morgan, Dutch Vander Linde, John Marston, Joel Miller, Owen Grady, and Lamar Davis lay in their beds, all critically injured and heavily bandaged. Blue, the female adult velociraptor friend of Owen Grady, silently made her way into the room, her eyes filled with tears as she looked upon her injured friends. As she lay down on the floor, Blue couldn't help but feel the weight of the loss of her velociraptor team members, Charlie, Echo, and Delta. She silently cried and mourned their absence, her long clawed arms tightly crossed as she whispered, "I am so sorry my friends, I am lost without you. I miss you all so much." The other injured characters on their hospital beds remained unaware of Blue's mourning as they slept peacefully, their bodies desperately trying to heal from their injuries. Michael DeSanta stirred slightly in his sleep, mumbling, "We are broken and lost," before falling silent once again. Blue continued to cry silently, her tears falling to the floor as she felt the heavy burden of grief weighing on her heart. She curled up on the floor, her eyes tightly closed, as she sobbed quietly, feeling as lost and broken as she had ever been. The night seemed endless as Blue's tears continued to flow, her silent sobs filling the room with a sense of sadness and despair. In her grief-stricken state, she whispered, "I am so sorry my dear sweet friends. I am lost. I don't know where to go now." The emotional pain of losing her teammates was too much for Blue to bear, and she continued to cry like a little hatchling, her heartbroken and tear-filled eyes pressing against her scaly tail. The night dragged on, but Blue's mourning never ceased as she silently cried in her sleeping state. As the first light of dawn began to filter into the room, Blue finally fell into a restless sleep, her tears dried on her face. The other injured characters started to stir awake, unaware of Blue's silent pain and mourning as they began to slowly come to life once again. The night had been long and filled with tears, but as morning broke, hope began to emerge once again in the hospital room. The injured characters may have been broken and lost, but they were not alone in their suffering. Blue, the silent mourner, would always be there to support them through their darkest moments. And as the sun rose on a new day, a glimmer of hope shone through the darkness, promising a brighter tomorrow for all. Words.